Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can see me. At first, didn't seem like I was going to be able to turn on my camera, but I'm Liz Krueger, and I'm so glad you're all here with us. And this is the first part of a 3-day virtual older adult resource fair. And today's event is called Connecting While Solo and Aging. Now, we used to do our our senior resource fair as an annual event in person. We were up to almost 900 people a couple of years. But since COVID and now post-COVID, but sort of COVID, too much risk again, we haven't gone back to an in-person model, even though it was so much fun to have everyone in the world coming into the same place and time. So we're doing it by Zoom and Facebook Live. You're on one or the other. And as usual for my webinars, there's closed captioning available, but you have to activate it. So if you are on Zoom, click live transcript in the meeting controls to start viewing closed captioning. And if you're in the Facebook Live event, you'll see a setting button in the bottom right-hand corner of the video. Click on CC for closed caption to activate the process. As usual, this session is being recorded, and everyone who RSVP'd will receive an email with links to the event video, the resources that are posted in the chat, and presenters' PowerPoints if any of them have them. We have a really packed agenda of impressive people today. But again, I want to remind everyone, because you're getting this all within a day or two, you don't have to be writing down everything you see. After everyone presents, then we're going to have some time for everyone to come back and to have a Q&A. And people have already submitted questions, and we'll try to get to them all. But if you have other questions that arise during the presentations, there's a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and you can type in questions there. Now, if any of our presenters or any of my great staff know the answer, they're going to just type the answer there. But if we don't have an answer, we're going to put it on, we're going to try to get it on the list during the actual Q&A session. And again, on the CC, remember, some of us have limited hearing, but still think we don't need help with that. I have to tell you, I've even started to use CC when watching TV. It makes everything so much more understandable as I'm listening. So I'm a big supporter of people trying that for themselves. Okay, so in 2023, our U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, released a report titled, Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. When Dr. Murthy began his tenure as the Surgeon General, he did not see loneliness as a public health concern, but after he went on a cross-country listening tour, he heard that many people across generations felt isolated, invisible, and insignificant. After the tour, the Surgeon General did some research and learned that loneliness is more than a bad feeling. Being socially disconnected can actually have an impact on our physical health akin to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Wow. This afternoon, our wonderful presenters will share information about making connections. Just because some of us are solo agers does not mean we are alone. First, we will hear from Grace Morton, who's the project associate at the New York Academy of Medicine Center for Healthy Aging. Grace will present on efforts to address loneliness on a national level. Following Grace, we will have our own Detective Anthony Nuccio from the 19th Precinct, who will talk to us about his role as an older adult liaison on the Upper East Side of the 19th Precinct of the NYPD. Next, we will have Lauren Taylor, a social worker from SPOP, a mental health services agency for older adults, will present on the power of personal narrative to help us connect and provide meaning. After Lauren, Reverend Beverly Bartlett will speak about the role faith institutions can play in giving us a sense of community and providing support. I personally have a large number of different faith communities in my district, and I have found them all to be welcoming to people, whether or not they share the same religion. Finally, we will hear from Robin Strashun of Searching Care, along with her wonderful team. They'll be speed talking. Ann Darmstetter, Ira Levine, Rita Callahan, and Joanne Gigante, all of whom have in older age explored new things and ended up making new connections. I want to thank Robin, who is dedicated to making and keeping connections, for her help in shaping today's session. Now it's my pleasure to start us off with Grace Morton. Good afternoon, Grace.
Good afternoon, Senator, and thank you so much for having me. I'm just going to share my slideshow, so just give me one moment. Excellent. Wonderful. Hopefully you're able to see my slides now. All right.
It looks good.
Thank you so much. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Grace Morton, and I am an associate at the New York Academy of Medicine's Center for Healthy Aging. We are a public health and health equity research institution located right here in New York City in East Harlem on the corner of 5th Avenue and 103rd Street. Our building has been there for I believe nearly 200 years now, so you've probably seen our institution. And if you ever would like to stop by, we do monthly free tours of our fantastic library. So today I was asked to come and speak and talk about social isolation and loneliness as a national issue that's being addressed and considered incredibly important. So I just want to start us off by talking about a few definitions. So firstly, I think it's important to recognize that loneliness and social isolation are different topics, and that there's an important distinguishment made between those two terms. First, loneliness is a subjective feeling of being alone, feeling disconnected and not close to others. It can be temporary, it can be involuntary, and you can even feel lonely when you're surrounded by others. While social isolation is an objective lack of social contacts and interactions. It can be a state of complete or near complete lack of contact between individual and society. And the important distinction made here is that an individual can be isolated but not lonely, and an individual can be lonely but not isolated. They're not necessarily always found together. Our team here at NIAM was asked to present because of our work that we did earlier this year in partnership with the John A. Hartford Foundation. We came together and convened more than 80 national experts focused on aging, healthcare, social connection, loneliness, and a variety of other topics, from government agencies, from research institutions, academic institutions, and community organizations. The goal of this event was to establish a national strategy to address social isolation and loneliness in adults aged 65 and older. This event was put into place because of the priority that was set by a number of different organizations throughout the country. First, in February 2020, and if you notice, that's a few weeks before the global pandemic really became a large issue. And so it's before all of these Zoom meetings that we became comfortable with. So this has been an issue far before the pandemic and online meetings. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine established a lengthy report on social isolation and loneliness in older adults and identified the healthcare system as a potential opportunity to address such a topic. But after that, as Senator Krueger acknowledged, the U.S. Surgeon General Vivek also published a report on social connection and isolation, further identifying social connection as a national priority. So why focus on the healthcare system? Our report specifically focuses on the healthcare system, and we see this as an opportunity to address an institution that most adults interact with in their life. The idea is that problems like social isolation can't be solved alone. You need to connect with the broader public health and social care communities, which the healthcare system is integrated well throughout the community. The healthcare system may be in the best position to identify those who are most isolated or lonely, as people are, even if they don't see a primary care physician, often may have to reach out to emergency care every once in a while. It's a relatively untapped partner when thinking about social issues like social connection. Some of the challenges is that the ideas of social isolation, like I said before, and loneliness tend to be conflated. So there's variation in terminology, measures, and outcomes. There's also limited research on low-income, underserved, and vulnerable populations, or at-risk populations. The biggest two concerns that we see as an institution are limited research on interventions specific to the clinical setting and the quality of intervention literature. So the goals that was set out by the national academies was to develop a more robust evidence base, to translate current research into healthcare practices, improve awareness of the issue, strengthen ongoing education and training, and to strengthen ties between the healthcare system and community-based networks and resources, since that's where most people interact with the most other people. So what was the outcome of this event? What came from it was a report published by the New York Academy of Medicine that resulted in 8 recommendations for addressing social isolation and loneliness in older adults. This came from a consensus from the event, which had more than 80 national experts present. Those 8 recommendations are as follows. To include social isolation and loneliness as a social determinant of health. This means when a doctor asks questions about access to food or access to shelter or other questions like this, that social isolation and the amount of connection that you have in your life is also a topic that's brought up. Also, to support efforts to train healthcare and social service professionals on social isolation and loneliness among older adults. We want the people who are interacting with older adults to think about this as an issue that's prominent. Next is to promote partnerships between community-based organizations and healthcare organizations, networks, and resources to address social isolation and loneliness among older adults. Ideally, we would like healthcare professionals to have some examples in mind of community-based organizations that can help older adults become connected when an issue of social isolation or loneliness is brought up during a medical visit. Next, we'd like to build upon existing federally funded efforts to develop a national resource center on social isolation and loneliness among older adults. This is something that's already being worked on, and we're very thrilled to see continue being developed after our meeting in January. Fifth is a focus on policy efforts on older adults who have been historically underserved. This is an issue that's not isolated to any population, and we want to make sure that all are able to be addressed. Then we'd like to standardize the approach to measure and document social isolation and loneliness among older adults. Right now, there's no easy way to determine the number of people experiencing this issue. If we had a standardized way to measure this throughout medical practice, then we could better enumerate the problem and be able to direct funding towards addressing it. Seventh, we'd ensure that older adults are included as active partners in social isolation and loneliness research and evaluation. That begins in conversations like this one here, where older adults are able to join directly and have a conversation with people like me, who are researchers, and connecting directly back to academic institutions. And then lastly, we'd like to advance the role of technology in mitigating social isolation and loneliness among older adults. As we've all seen over the last 4 years, the role of technology has become incredibly crucial on remaining connected to those around you. As we continue moving forward, we should develop these tools so that we can remain even more connected in the future. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much. And based on your recommendations, I actually think these webinars that lots of us have learned to do, it was a really useful tool of technology for bringing more people in to participate with activities where it might be hard for them to get there in person. So perfect ending recommendation by you. All right, our next presenter, and he's been with us on a number of different webinars, is our own Detective Anthony Nuccio, Crime Prevention Officer at the 19th Precinct. Hi, Tony. Oh, unmute.
There we go. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate you having me. So yes, I'm the crime prevention officer for the precinct of the 19th on the Upper East Side. We cover from 59th Street to 96th Street. I was trying to get my PowerPoint up, but I'm having technical difficulties on my end. So if someone on that side could post the one I gave, if not, it's okay. You can look at my face. That's perfectly good as well.
Just give me one moment. I can throw it up.
Thank you so much. So every precinct in the city, there's 77 precincts. Every precinct has a crime prevention officer assigned to it. We're also designated as the older adult liaisons for the city. So 77 precincts plus 9 housing officers, PSAs. So that's all those crime prevention officers are assigned as older adult liaisons. So we follow up with all crime victims over the age 65 to ensure that they are getting the resources that are available to them through the city and through the state. We work closely with our colleagues in the DA's office for elder abuse and the Adult Protective Services and the Department of Aging. This is my contact information. So if you live on the Upper East Side and have any questions, feel free to email me. You can also connect with us we're on Nextdoor now, which is great. We're also on X and Facebook. I post a lot of information on those platforms about crimes and events that are happening within the confines of the Upper East Side. So please feel free to follow us and feel free to email me if you have any questions about anything that it may concern you. If you go to the next slide, just a briefly overview of the older adult liaison program. So in all 77 precincts, there's a designated officer, like I said, that reviews all crime reports that come into the precinct and specifically looks for anybody over the age of 65 that's been the victim of a crime. We're liaisons and we're a contact person. So if you were ever the victim of crime, you would call 911 or visit the precinct to make a report. And then what you could expect and what you should expect is a follow-up phone call from a few different entities. One being the crime prevention officer, the older adult liaison. 2 being Safe Horizon, member of Safe Horizon that works in the precinct. They work within our crime victim advocate program. I work closely with them as well. They are civilians. They are not NYPD employees, but they do also provide resources to crime victims of every age, but they also do focus on our older adult community mainly. So you may receive a phone call from them as well as in certain districts here in the Upper Manhattan, Department of Aging also will reach out. So I work very closely with those entities and making sure the victim of any particular crime is taken care of, and if there's any available resources to them that they don't know about, I'm there to provide those to them, as well as counseling and prevention and providing additional crime prevention tips on various other scams. So if you're the victim of one particular crime, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll not see other types of crimes in the community. So when I do follow up with these calls, I'll address the crime that was of concern, and then go over a variety of other instances that I want the residents to be aware of. So that's the main role of a crime prevention officer. In addition, we go to many community groups, senior centers, older adult centers, residences, block associations, and we're available to speak to those associations about crimes that are occurring in the neighborhood, crimes that are occurring in the city, and to give the prevention tips on to how to prevent those from happening to you. So look out for whatever precinct you're in. If you're in the 19th, I'm your guy. I'm your crime prevention officer and older adult liaison. But if you don't live in the confines of the 19th precinct, which is the Upper East Side, you can visit our website, and there is actually the next slide. I'll show you. You can see who your older adult liaison is. So if you go to nyc.gov/NYPD and navigate to the crime prevention section, you'll actually be able to see who your crime prevention officer and older adult liaison is. You'll get their email, you'll get their phone number, and we're working on getting photos of all of us. So you'll be able to see exactly who it is you're speaking to. So you visit the website, you'll see that. It should be updated soon with all the pictures. Feel free to reach out to whoever your crime prevention officer is. And if you need any services from them, or you'd like to schedule some sort of lecture or seminar for your group or your residents, they will be the person to go to. They'll be your go-to individual, your contact with the precinct. So you see on the screen here is all the Manhattan crime prevention officers, but there are crime prevention officers in every single borough, Every single community has one. So visit that website, find out who your crime prevention officer is, and reach out to them for any resources that you may need. But I want to just explain that we are here for you. If you are ever the victim of a crime, no matter what it is, no matter when it happened, past or present, always call 911. Don't ever be afraid of calling 911. The worst that can happen is you call 911 and they say this is not a 911 incident, and they'll transfer you to 311. So you should never be worried about calling 911. 911 should be your first number you call if you believe you're the victim of a crime, you're suspicious of somebody, or a suspicious of an incident. If you see something, we always hear, say something. Say something by calling 911. Never fear calling 911. A lot of instances I'll hear is like, oh, I didn't know 911 is, I thought it was only for emergencies that are happening right now. No, 911 is also for crimes in the past or crimes that are about to happen as well, or a suspicion of a crime that may be happening. So always 911 first, and don't fear if it isn't a 911 issue, they will transfer you to 311. No harm, no foul. I promise you. And never try calling the precinct directly. Like a lot of times I'll get voicemails or emails on my line about emergencies. I want to make sure that you're aware that those are not monitored 24/7. 911 is your first call. And after the crime has occurred, after the incident, then you can get resources to contact you, such as myself. But always 911. Don't fear calling 911. All right. My part was brief this time. I didn't have much to go over. I just wanted to make sure you all knew about the older adult liaison and program and how to find those officers that are in your command. I don't think I see any questions immediately, but I'll be available for questions at the end. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Senator, for having me. And I'll be happy to answer your questions during the Q&A section.
Great. Well, thank you very much, officer or detective, excuse me. And I will reference that we recently did a webinar specifically on scams, and Detective Nuccio is an expert on those issues, and they really target older New Yorkers, the scammers. And so I just want to reemphasize, you can always watch that webinar by going to my website or calling my staff and say, how do I find it? Because it's still there, up and running, really valuable resources. And the importance of understanding, don't be embarrassed if you got scammed. People think, oh, how can I even tell anyone this happened to me? Or they're going to think there's something wrong with me. I should have known better. Forget all that. Just call 911 and get the assistance. So perhaps we can either get you back the money that you got scammed from, or at least stop it from continuing. But it's also helping law enforcement find these people and track them down and get them out of abusing and exploiting other people. So thank you very much. And we'll get back to you during question and answer. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
All right, our next presenter is Lauren Taylor, who's a social worker at SPOP, and is going to talk about the importance of developing personal narratives to create meaning. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and welcome everybody this afternoon. I have 10 minutes to talk about a subject that's very dear to my heart, and I could go on and on, but I know I can't do that today. I'm just going to put my PowerPoint up, and it's mostly pictures and quotes sort of as a guide. Hold on one second. Let me start this as a slideshow, and I'll just tell you to begin with, because my background says SPOP. Some of you may be familiar with Service Program for Older People. It is one piece of my work, a very big piece of my work. It's an outpatient, not-for-profit geriatric mental health clinic for people ages 55 and older. And I've been on staff there for over 30 years. I love what I do. I have no interest in retiring, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how I use narrative in my clinical work. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I also have a degree from Columbia in oral history. Many years ago, when I was first starting out at SPOP, and I have to say my daughter, who's now a public defender, was in a stroller at that time, so it was a long time ago. One of my clients said to me, how can you possibly understand me? You're young and I'm old. And I don't know what possessed me to say to her, just stay where you are and I'll catch up. And I certainly have. But in terms of creating connections through storytelling. My work has always involved listening to stories, my work with older people, but storytelling is a part of our daily lives, whether we realize it or not. When we go to the doctor, we tell a story. We tell a story about our condition. We talk to our neighbors if we're lucky enough to have neighbors we can speak with. You know, if we have families, if we have friends, but we also know that many people are very isolated and don't have listeners for their stories, although they may have many stories to tell. Oops, I'm just trying to change my slide here. As we know that isolation is one of the most damaging human experiences. It is not only psychologically and emotionally devastating, but we know now that it also has an impact on the immune system, and that it is through mirror neurons that we actually continue to grow from the time we're born until the very end. So our interactions with other people are critically important. Sometimes connection, which is a big word I use. I teach at the social work school at Columbia, and a lot of my students will say to me, you know, what kinds of skills can I use? And I always say to them, your ears are your most valuable tool, because it is in listening. And when people are isolated, listening to people tell their stories is so important. Oops, sorry, I'm just trying to change the slide and it's not working. So I like this quote: the universe is made of stories, not atoms. And it's true. This is how we understand, is through stories. So from the moment children can understand the spoken word, parents begin to speak to them from a common past, often going back several generations. And I'm very interested in the intergenerational transmission of stories and the meaning of stories in families, whether they're stories about money, whether they're stories about relatives, whether they're trauma narratives. This happens to be my granddaughter, who's 16 now, but I love this picture because I think it really speaks to the fact that even when a child is pre-verbal, we have that communication. Our biographies are inseparable from our bodies. Our stories are in our bodies as well. We understand time in the context of narrative. And some cultures reinforce the value of storytelling, which I think has really been lost to a great extent in a lot of the culture here. And certainly the advent of technology has changed the way we tell stories. But this idea, I mean, I was very lucky to have a grandmother who lived to be 98 and was lucid to the end, and she was the family historian. And I remember, you know, that's how I learned about my history and the history of our family. I think this is a very important quote. It's every time I tell my story, I remove one bit of hurt from inside me, I ease my wound. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples in a minute of how I've used narrative in my clinical work as well. And another quote that I like, the poet Audre Lorde wrote letters to her therapist. And in one of them, she wrote, "One part of my story is yours too." And I think a story is a co-creation. The listener is very much a part of the story as well. And the philosopher Simone Weil said, "The love of our neighbor in all its fullness is simply being able to say," she said to him, I guess I would say to them now, "What are you going through?" But I think as a listener, our most important role is to bear witness. This is a 99-year-old Holocaust survivor. I'm speaking to her. She's telling me a story about the statue that her son was a hidden child and her sister found him after the war. And you can see in her face how meaningful it is that she's able to share this story with someone. And just to end in terms of the PowerPoint, this is a quote from Wendy Lustbader's Thoughts on the Meaning of Frailty that I really love. "We can look for beauty and embrace our ultimate fragility anytime we choose. Doing so would tell us what kind of life to lead. Once we begin living in terms of the question, who would take care of me if I got sick, the whole of life transforms. The question mandates a shift in the order of things, making a life rich with generosity and kindness more desirable than any other kind of fortune." I'm just going to leave this up here now. If you're interested in finding out more about narrative in the sort of in the literary form, this book, Narrative in Social Work Practice, I have a chapter in that book. It's called Sharing a Narrative Meal, and it's about the work I do in the domain of my social work using narrative. And the other book, which is in publication now, you can pre-order it on Amazon, but this is a book that I wrote with a social worker in Hong Kong, Esther Chow, and she's more of a researcher and I'm the clinician. My piece is sort of notes from the field, and it's really about cultural differences in storytelling. And Ada Mui, who is a wonderful professor of gerontology at the School of Social Work at Columbia, grew up in Hong Kong, and she's kind of the bridge between these two worlds. But just in the couple of minutes I have left, I've had any number of experiences, both within my clinical work and outside, just doing straight oral histories. Just in terms of community work, I did a year-long oral history project at the Leonard Covello Center, which is part of the Carter Burden Network, in East Harlem. And I interviewed people who really thought they had nothing to say until I started to ask them questions about their lives, and they were being recorded. And suddenly this had much greater meaning for them. And I think the most wonderful moment at the end of every interview was when I put the headphones on the person I was interviewing, and suddenly their faces lit up because they could hear their stories being recorded and captured. And at the end of that year, I organized a storytelling event for the community so that the older people in East Harlem could tell the younger people what life was like when they were growing up. And it was a wonderful moment. I know I only have a minute left, but I've had many, many instances in my therapeutic work, and many ways of working with people in terms of narratives. A guy who was very, very depressed, and we ended up creating together his life in song. And he started going to senior centers and participating in open mics, and he created a show for himself, and he invited his friends and family. And in it, he told them all about his life, and he had been a very solitary person before that. So many, many ways that we can use to connect with people through narrative. And I would encourage you to just listen to people, and ask them about themselves. I think it's a wonderful way for us to connect. And through Senator Krueger's office, if you're interested in finding out more about having stories recorded, they can get in touch with me, and my contact information is up on the screen too. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I was an anthropology student a million years ago as an undergrad. And the one thing I really learned from anthropology is it's all about going out there and listening to people. And that's how you learn, and that's how culture gets processed. So thank you so much. Our next presenter is Reverend Beverly Bartlett from Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church, who does lots of wonderful work in my district. Good afternoon, Beverly, or Reverend.
That's fine. Beverly is fine. I am Beverly Bartlett. I've been an associate pastor at Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church for over 22 years now. And two of my primary areas of responsibility are staffing the Board of Deacons and pastoral care. The role of deacon is different in various faith traditions. In the Presbyterian Church, it is the, quote, office of sympathy and service. And church members are chosen to be deacons and ordained to that office according to their gifts for that office. A faith community can provide a valuable source of community, especially in New York City. One of the things that I realized when I moved to the city more than 30 years ago was just how isolating it can be and how hard it can be to find community among all these millions of people. Churches, synagogues, mosques, other faith traditions and communities can provide that sense of community. At Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church, MAPC for short, we have many older adults who find a strong sense of community in the church. This happens both informally and more intentionally. Informally, fellowship hour after Sunday morning worship is an intergenerational time of community gathering. And other fellowship events throughout the year provide the same thing. We also periodically have a senior lunch on Sundays, where around 20 of our older members join in a light lunch and conversation. In the past, our youth have spent time with the residents of James Lennox House, which is right around the corner from the church, providing help with computers, tablets, and phones. And other opportunities to connect at the church are Bible studies, book discussions, and other educational or spiritual growth gatherings that are held both on Zoom and in person. And as other people have already mentioned, learning how to get together on Zoom has actually been a really wonderful thing for a lot of our older adults. It allows them to participate in ways that they wouldn't be able to in person. We also have an active racial justice task force, and the majority of the participants in our events and discussions are seniors. And that provides both another opportunity for community and a chance to be involved in purposeful work and discussion. Our deacons provide a more focused ministry with our seniors. Many of our older members are assigned a deacon who develops a one-on-one relationship with them. Some of these seniors are homebound or living in a long-term care facility. Others are still able to get out and be at church regularly, but it's helpful to have a deacon that they can call on if they need to, and someone who can check in with them if we haven't seen them in a while, or if their circumstances change and they need more attention or assistance. These relationships depend on the individuals involved. In some cases, it's a regular note or a phone call. In others, it's a regular visit. For those who are still able to get out, it may be checking in with each other at church or a meeting for coffee or lunch or going to a museum together or for a walk in the park. And our deacons also often accompany seniors to doctor's visits. Over the years, there have been times when we've had to take a more active role for the older members in our church who have no family or no family nearby. We may serve as healthcare agents, and even on occasion, we've had church members that have served as power of attorney. Often our deacons or I have been there as people navigate the end of life and have no family to accompany them in their final weeks and days. Often it's been a deacon that realized a senior was in a difficult situation. Their circumstances had changed, or they were no longer able to navigate life's daily tasks. As a pastor, I rely heavily on our deacons to be the eyes and the ears of the church, and they've often called me to let me know that someone needs more attention, and we've been able to help them at times transition to a higher level of care, whether that's at home or moving to a long-term care facility. Our deacons work to educate themselves on what local resources are available to seniors. Some of them are on this Zoom today doing just that. Periodically, we will have someone from local agencies like Search and Care and Health Advocates for Older People come and talk with us about what they can offer. And we've developed a relationship with an estate attorney who every few years comes to talk with us about later life and end of life planning so we can help both our older members and members of any age be sure that they have things like healthcare proxies and medical directives and power of attorney in place. When we train our deacons, I stress that we are not social workers and we are not home health aides. Sometimes it does feel like we fall into those roles and even into a case manager role, but we try not to. What the church provides is companionship, spiritual connection, a sense of family when there is no other family, help in connecting with resources, and occasionally a helping hand. So houses of worship and faith communities can be valuable sources of community and support for seniors, especially those who are alone. And the relationship is mutual. They give every bit as much as they receive. In fact, many years ago, our deacons shifted from calling the people to whom they're assigned their carees to calling them their care partners, realizing that they get as much out of the relationship as the seniors do, and that it is indeed a care partnership. I want to close by telling you the story of one of our seniors from many years ago. Peg was a retired nurse. She had no family and lived around the corner from the church. She had been an active member of MAPC for decades, but in her last year, she had severe spinal stenosis, and she got to the point where she was rarely able to leave her apartment. One church member, who was an accountant, and his wife, who was a deacon, were Peg's close friends. They did her taxes and helped her with her finances and bill paying. We visited Peg regularly, especially as she became homebound and all but bedbound. I was visiting her once as she lay in bed and asked her how she was doing. She always had a positive response, regardless of her circumstances and her level of pain. And on this occasion, she was flat on her back and looking out the window. She didn't have a particularly remarkable view, but lying in bed, she could see the sky. This was a beautiful sunny day, and she looked up at the rectangle of brilliant blue that she could see from lying in bed and said, "Just look at that. How can you not believe in God looking at that blue, blue sky?" That was years ago, but has always stuck with me and is a small example of how this work is as much a gift to those of us visiting as those we are visiting. Soon after that, we helped Peg move into a nursing home, and her church friends and pastors visited her regularly in her final weeks. This is just one example of how the church provided community and care for an older member who had no family. I could tell you dozens of similar stories. I know other faith communities provide similarly for older adults in their midst and can be a valuable source of community and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for, I think, doing an uplifting example of things we can do as friends and neighbors and participants in our religious communities. Thank you. Our next, I guess, final group of speakers is the team from Search and Care, and I'm going to pass it over to them. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Senator Krueger. It's so exciting to be here with you all. I'm Robin Strashun from Search and Care, which since 1972 has been the glue that helps older adults remain in their homes and community as long as safely possible. We have a lot of ways to help people stay connected, whether through our social workers, our financial support program, our engagement groups, and also through volunteerism, which I think is really one of the themes of our gathering here today. And I don't want to just talk about it. I want to talk with some of the people that help Search and Care, and all of us, as you will see, are older adults. And the reason I've asked these specific people to come here today, not only do they inspire me, I'm really interested in how they also stay active in their communities and outside of their role in Search and Care. So I'm going to start with, first of all, let me tell you before I start with Anne, I want to tell you something I learned on Facebook recently about how chemicals, how to hack chemicals that actually do things for you physically that are wonderfully positive. And it's sort of a theme that's going to run through our conversation today. Dopamine, the reward chemical, can be had by achieving a goal, can be done by self-care activities, completing a task. Endorphins, which are the painkillers, can be done through exercise, listening to music, watching movie, laughing. Oxytocin, known as the love hormone, you can get that through socializing, physical touch, petting animals, helping others, good thing to do with volunteerism. And serotonin, which is a mood stabilizer, you can get that through sun exposure, mindfulness and meditation, and being with nature. So keeping that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, Ann Darmstetter. Hi, Ann.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm in the Christmas spirit. I have my little outfit on.
How did you first connect to Search and Care, Ann?
I was in the travel business, and after 9/11, I lost my job, so I went on different media or on websites, and I found a volunteer opportunity that said, Upper East Side, we have air conditioning. I'm too cheap to pay for an air conditioner, so I thought I'd come and it was like 5-block walk and I never left.
And what is your role here?
I help with the receptionist duties during the week, usually like one day a week, and answering the phones. And since I've been here almost 20 years, I kind of know the people, and I kind of help wherever I can.
And when you're not at Search and Care, what can we find you doing?
I just was gonna tag along with the gal that was ahead of us. I'm also on the pastoral care committee of the Brick Presbyterian Church, which is it's up at 92nd and Park, and we do the same things that the gal that just spoke. It's really wonderful to do that. Also, I volunteer with New York Cares. I just real quick, I just helped Thanksgiving Day to deliver foods to people in our community. And I was after being 2 hours in the rain, I was dripping wet, but it was just so wonderful to go out and to make sure that somebody that usually probably wouldn't have a Thanksgiving dinner had a Thanksgiving dinner.
Wonderful. So volunteering makes you feel good too, yes?
Yes, I love it.
Okay. And what else? Tell us just briefly your role at Brick. What kind of things do you do for your church?
I'm on the worship and music committee. I'm a sitting deacon now. I've taught Sunday school. I help them in nursery. We have a dinner program for the people that are in an SRO, single room occupancy home. They're not really homeless. On 81st Street, they come up to our church and have dinner on Tuesday nights. I just love everything about helping others.
I can see that, Ann, and you have been helping Search and Care for up 2 decades now, which is probably a record breaker for volunteerism with us. But I know it makes you feel good, otherwise you wouldn't keep doing it. Ann used to have a message on her answer machines that said, I'm out volunteering, maybe you should try it.
I put on my machine and go, hi, I'm not here right now. I'm out volunteering. Maybe you should get involved too. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. So a lot of people got upset with that, but Robin loved it.
I do love it. And there's one other thing that you do sometimes in the nicer weather. Do you help out with a golf tournament?
Oh, yes, I help with the PGA, the Professional Golf Association, but now we've transferred to the LPGA, the Ladies Professional Golf Tournament. I have a very fantastic role. I'm corporate hospitality, and I was just asked 2 weeks ago to join them in May next year out at Liberty National Golf Course out in New Jersey. And it's fun because we get to take the water taxi down from the bottom of the tip of Wall Street and go over on the water taxi. So I get to go and almost touch the Statue of Liberty for a whole week, and I love that.
You are a busy woman. I'm so glad you still make time for Search and Care. We're very lucky to have you. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rita Callahan.
Hi, Robin.
How you doing?
I'm doing great today.
So when I first met Rita, I'm just going to tell you this parenthetically before we start, because this is a very active woman. She bicycled to the interview. Rita, I've known you for maybe almost 4 years now. You had hip replacement surgery, and within 2 months, you were back up on your bike, right?
That's right. And I biked here today.
And she biked here today in winter time. I'm really impressed. So how did you connect to Search and Care?
You know, at some point, I guess it was early COVID, you know, everybody's home, and I saw an ad from Search and Care in, I think, one of our council members' emails that said
Gail Brewer,
that said that focused specifically on medical escorting. And I thought, well, that sounds really interesting. I can do that. So I responded, and here I am.
Well, let me just take a step back before we talk about medical escorting, because I neglected to say, one of the main roles of volunteering with our population is that of friendly visitor. It's something that DeRote actually is really known for, but we like to think we do it just as well because it's so important. If people are semi-housebound or unable to get out by themselves very often, it's really important to bring a little sunshine and the human connection into those homes. So that's what some of our volunteers do. Receptionists, something a volunteer does as well. And by the way, if you're watching this and you'd be interested in being a reception volunteer for Search and Care, that is a real need we have right now. So I'm just doing a public service announcement. Thank you very much, Senator Krueger. But let's get back to you. What is a medical escort?
A medical escort, as the name suggests, is contacted by you and volunteers to escort. So I go to a person's home. Usually I bike there. And then I, with them, however they choose, you know, usually there might be taxi, it might be a car, you know, or accessoride. And we go together to the medical appointment, wherever that is, and I wait for them during their appointment, and then I escort them home in the same way. And
how does it
that's
make
what we
you
do.
feel at the end of the escort?
You know, for me, it's like an adventure in terms of play, you know, like now I'm in a different place and I meet so many different people. And so that's always interesting and fun. And often I'll be escorting the same person over time, a few times. So then I get to know people a little better.
And this is one of the ways Search and Care helps people. We like to think in terms of healthcare equity, because not everybody has the benefit of a neighbor, a friend, a family member, or a home attendant who can help them get to and from an appointment. People have mobility challenges, they have visual challenges, they may have cognitive challenges that make it a hardship for them to go by themselves. We remove that impediment by having wonderful Rita, who wouldn't want Rita to help you get to and from one place and just take the stress out of it. You are a stress reliever.
Oh, thank you.
What do you do when you're not doing medical escorts for us?
You know, well, you mentioned a minute ago, DeRote. And as many people may already know, DeRote, D-O-R-O-T, is an organization located on the Upper West Side since 1976 that offers services and programs to older adults with the goal that they can continue to live independently, and everything they offer is free. So one thing I've been involved in specifically at DeRote, as a participant, took one of their flagship programs called Aging Alone Together. I took that as a participant almost 2 years ago. And then I saw, you know, I really thought the program was beneficial. It's a 6-week program that identifies tools and strategies for people to continue to age successfully. And then at the same time, sort of similar to the email that I saw from you, I saw from DeRote like opportunity to volunteer. So I thought I'd like to facilitate or be involved in the delivery of Aging Alone Together. So now for the last 2 years, I've been offering and facilitating in-person and remote deliveries of that program. In fact, for anybody whose ears are perked up and saying, that sounds interesting, right now is the time to register on their website for their next remote program, which will be in February.
Good timing, Rita. Thank you so much. I want to also say, if you're interested in volunteering, there's some wonderful resources right here in the city, nycservice.org, volunteermatch.org. But just to divert for a second, if you are a pet lover, and as you get older, you may not want the responsibility of being a pet owner yourself, there are a couple of ways you can get satisfaction by contacting pawsnewyork.org. It's a nonprofit, the only one in the city that specifically recruits volunteers to help walk dogs, to help change cat litter for people who love their pets but cannot take care of themselves, take care of those pets themselves physically. Recently, Rita admitted to me that she used to love walking a neighbor's dog. The neighbor's no longer there, or the dog's no longer there. So I've connected Rita with Paws New York, and she's interested in being a foster, temporary foster, as a volunteer basis for Paws. Our city shelters are also desperately in need of volunteers. What could be more fun than taking somebody else's dog for a walk?
And that meets so many of the things you talked about before, about all those good
things that it does for you.
It's you're volunteering and you're exercising.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And here is Ira Levine.
Hi.
Ira, how are you?
Hi, everyone.
So Ira, what brought you to Search and Care?
Well, I had just retired.
From?
I was an attorney, an active attorney. I knew I had to remain mentally and physically active.
Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to give back.
Lovely.
I've always felt that way. I've done things,
You had a family member that you were very actively
yes,
supporting.
yes, I had my younger brother, was diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was in his second year at Juilliard.
Mm.
And that was over 50 years ago. And I became his primary caregiver, and I still over him all these years.
So you had another space in your heart to offer kindness to somebody else that you didn't yet know. And you came to me wanting to be a volunteer, right?
That's correct.
A friendly visitor volunteer.
That's correct.
So since that time, we've connected you specifically with one of our clients. She's given me permission to use her name. Her name is Karen, and who during the pandemic became so isolated that she's now agoraphobic, which means she's afraid to go out by herself. So your role is not just visiting Karen. What do you do for Karen?
Well, I'm on the phone with her a lot.
Okay. He's a good phone giver, yeah.
And an example, I went with her so she could vote.
Perfect.
She had to bring back packages to FedEx. I walked with her and helped her carry the packages.
Because she won't leave her building unless you're
Yes,
there.
I have to
to
be
go
with
with
her.
That's
correct.
awesome. What a specific, unique purpose you have in this woman's life. She benefits from it. How do you benefit from it?
It gives back. I just feel great. It's rewarding. It's giving back. I'm capable of doing that. And it's a wonderful feeling.
And when you're not, what other things do you do for yourself that connect you to other people?
Well,
Your personal interest.
Yeah, I take Tai Chi with my wife. I take singing lessons.
That interests me a lot. We talked about how music really does good things for you
I love
physically.
the American Songbook of Irving Berlin and Gershwin.
Are your lessons in a group situation or are they solo?
No, it's a group. There are 6 of us in a class, and we take vocal lessons, and then we'll pick a song and sing it, and it'll be critiqued, and that's also I love that.
Well, I love that too. I grew up in a house where singing was the norm. When we got together, out came the ukuleles. That's what we did. We didn't turn on television.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
My wife abhors the word aging or senior.
Mm-hmm.
And she uses the term, only the term, that she's chronologically challenged.
I love that. Chronologically challenged.
She's not old, she's not a senior, she's not aging.
That's awesome.
And that's what we have to do. We have to keep physically and mentally active.
True. Thank you, Ira.
Okay.
Lastly, I'm going to introduce Joanne Giganti, who I've met some years back as Search and Care's controller. Her life, as life changes, we go in different paths. Joanne, hi, you want to unmute yourself? Can you unmute yourself?
I can.
Hi, Joanne. Joanne supports Search and Care in a different way now. I'm just going to sort of fast forward for the benefit of us all. Healthcare issues led Joanne down a different path where you were studying meditation, mindfulness, yoga for your personal benefit, correct?
Yes,
You
absolutely.
have since studied this for quite some time, very seriously. It is not just a practice, it is a lifestyle for you. Joanne provides Search and Care with meditation, mindfulness, and chair yoga for our own groups, but for me as well. We run a mentoring program in East Harlem. Joanne also does a 10-minute mindfulness. At the end of that, it's the only time these high school kids are not with something in their ears. This is one of the most helpful things that they do. So Joanne, please share with us what you wanted to share today in the 4 minutes we have left. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Robin. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Yes, I was asked to share a simple exercise, and I would like to do that right now. It's an exercise that you can use when you're feeling anxious, overwhelmed, living in the what ifs in your mind, when the thoughts when the thoughts are jamming up jamming up your mind and you can't think clearly sometimes. And this is a simple breathing exercise. And I'm going to show it to you. I'm putting my hand up like this, though this is not necessarily how it has to be done once you practice it. And if you'd like to just come try this, try it along with me, you can do that. But I will show it this way, and then I'll talk a little bit more. So let's just try this. It's has to do with connecting to the breath, that our breath is always with us, and it's a way for us to come into the present moment and to calm the mind a little bit, just kind of get our footing once again, all right? So if we start with just putting the hand up, bring our finger down to the base of the thumb, and you just begin to inhale and trace as you inhale up the side of the thumb, and pause, exhale as we trace down, and pause, inhale, and pause, exhale, and pause, inhale, pause, exhale, pause, inhale, pause, and exhale. Pause, inhale, pause, and exhale. And then you just take a moment, notice if anything is shifted, and maybe you need to do it again. Maybe that's just enough to kind of get a little reset. Let the stress hormones begin to subside. Let the heart rate and the blood pressure begin to lower. And this is something you can do anywhere, anytime. You don't have to put your hand up like this. You can have it on your lap. You can have it on a table or a desk in front of you or your shopping cart. You can be doing it in the doctor's office. And if you can't put your hand anywhere and you've practiced this, you can just imagine tracing the hand and following the breath in your mind's eye. So I hope that's helpful. Take good care, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone from Search and Care. Really appreciate your participation today. So now we're going to ask everybody to turn on their cameras. And I'm going to read off some questions, and I might aim them at specific people. If not, anybody's welcome to jump in. A question that came up a couple of times during the presentation, I think really aimed at Detective Nuccio, if he's still with us. So we're older, what can we carry for self-protection when we're walking in the street? I know there's certain advice about never risk your life over some money, just hand it over. But what is your recommendation? Are you still with us, Detective?
I'm still here. We get that question a lot.
Yes.
And you kind of, the first thing I tell you is I don't want you to ever have to use anything like that. So, try to avoid confrontation at all costs. Use your voice. If you're ever in an instance where you're in trouble, screaming, getting other people's attention, ducking into a 24-hour doorman building, a 24-hour shop or bodega, getting to be where other people are, is my number one advice. If someone ever does try to approach you and tries to take something, just let it go. Whatever is on your person should be able to be replaced. You shouldn't be carrying anything that is irreplaceable. They do sell devices out there that are panic alarms. We used to give these out at the precinct, but we haven't had them in some time, but they make a lot of noise. You can pull it out and it starts screeching. The whole idea of that is to get other people's attention to help you. If you are the victim of a crime or you fall and you need help, a panic alarm. To touch base on that specific question, small personal sized pepper sprays are legal. It's hard to purchase in New York City, New York State, but they are, the small ones are. Mace is a chemical spray. It's not allowed. That is illegal. But I don't want you ever have to use that. So like the number one thing is use your voice, have a cell phone ready to go, and know your locations that are open 24/7 and places you can duck in to get help if you need it.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so a lot of the questions we got actually have been answered by everyone, but here's one I don't know that anybody touched on, and I'll open it to everyone. How and where is it possible to meet older men here in New York City? I'm very interested in dating. Where do they go to socialize and meet women of approximately their own age? Who's got some good ideas here?
Well, I can say that I have a client who just turned 90, who's on Match.com, and she's having the time of her life. So that is one way, but she's very specific. She only wants people who are in her neighborhood, never meets anyone at home, out for coffee, and that's it.
Okay. Well, I know that we have some great senior centers in my district where people go very often for meals as well as for programs during the day. And I certainly think that going out to a senior center is actually a pretty good place to meet some people your own age. You know, as we know demographically, they're more likely to be more women than men. And that's just a fact of life, but actually making friends to be able to do things with and socialize with, even if they're the same gender, gives you more opportunities to go out and explore other things where you might meet men that you're interested in, or vice versa. Anybody else got some ideas?
I'm going to suggest two things, Liz. I think, well, not just because you're here with us today, but I think your community church is a good place to meet people of all kinds, basically, and that would include men. But being a reader, I would think your local bookstore might be a great place.
Oh, younger people definitely tell me they go to bookstores to meet other people. So why not older people? Same thing. Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And I know at least a number of churches and synagogues have sort of social programs for different age groups, including, I think, older New Yorkers. So again, we heard about, you know, the work of one specific church, although a number of others were added into the chats. But I do think that there are quite a few who are running programs like that. So it might also be a good place to meet new people. Sorry, there are so many questions. So people are asking, how do they learn to volunteer? And again, we've mentioned quite a few here of volunteer opportunities. And I think we also put up in chat that we're going to develop a new list of as many volunteer opportunities as we can find through groups that we have been working with. There was a question about finding an attorney for a will. I just want to remind everybody that there's going to be a third section of this 3-day event. And the third one will be about legal resources. And so we will have multiple presenters on that virtual resource fair day to talk about legal questions that you may have and how to get help. Just wanted to let people know, oh, this is fun too. So some people are really interested in traveling, but they're not sure, you know, they don't necessarily want to travel alone. Are there any particularly good resources for learning about travel for older people? Because you have to factor in, you might have been a great hiker earlier in life. Even though you might still be biking, you might have to think twice about that. I think you're on mute. know?
Well, our group here had some suggestions. Rita was saying Road Scholar, which I guess is a tour group, for older.
Older everybody,
Well,
many
yeah.
older adults.
But I could also tell you that, personally speaking, Anne, who's with us, her getaway is going on cruises. She often goes by herself, because that's her thing. And parenthetically, she's able to do this. She goes all the way by bus to the ferry, across to Brooklyn, right? And she's written about it on a specific cruise chat. The last time she did it, there was a couple from England very proudly boasting about how they read on a chat how one woman in New York said to do that, and they were sitting next to the person who wrote it.
There's 3,800 people on the ship. It was ironical.
And I do know that there are ships that actually target different age populations. So I had a friend who went on a Disney cruise because she had some grandchildren and she took them. And she said, okay, they had a ball. If I was traveling on my own, I would never choose a Disney cruise, not disrespecting the company, but it by definition is designed for activities for children. So she was saying, you know, they're always in the pools, they're always really noisy. The activities are really designed for children. So I believe that for those of you who do like cruising, one just needs to double check, is it a good company? And two, is this a specific cruise or cruise company that actually does focus on sort of older adults or adults without children on the trip? So thank you. And actually, there do seem to be quite a few groups listed when you just do a search on Google for travel agencies and tour groups specifically for older people. I know I was reading an example of, they used to love to bike through Italy, but they found they really can't bike. So now they're taking cooking classes through Italy. I think that sounds pretty great personally. Because what's the best thing to do in Italy anyway is eat. So if you can find some activities that are a good match with both your interests and, you know, where you are in your life, I think that's also really important to think about.
If I could just add one more thing for people who either can't afford or can't get away for any extended period of time, a trip to Governor's Island. It's, I think for seniors, it's $4 on the ferry. You feel like you're in another world. And it's very refreshing to spend the day there and come back. And much quicker than going anywhere else, but just a recommendation. So
Thank you. Okay, so I think a fairly common question. I'm still nervous about going to events on my own, arts events or restaurants. Anybody with suggestions on how to overcome this fear of going out and trying new things? Because we are having arts and culture as our next senior virtual day, but it's also true that there's a lot of programs out there that would be perfect. I know the Metropolitan Museum has all kinds of classes and tours, and most of the other museums do. And there's even eating clubs nowadays where people sign up, and it's a good way to meet people, apparently. It will be like 20 people at a restaurant all together. But what if you have this fear of even trying that? How do you get past your fear of experimenting? Okay, we got a stumper here. That's okay. We'll think about it some more. You know, I think it's like, give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? Right? You don't meet anybody when you're there. You don't think you really like it. Okay, that's one try. But, you know, try to think about how you can try another approach. And again, some of the arts and cultural examples will definitely come up at the next event. Okay, again, some of our broader questions that I think the answer is there are a lot of different organizations. So for example, looking for support groups for being a widow or widower. I do think that a number of the churches and synagogues offer those kinds of programs for when you're grieving about losing someone in your life. And we were also being asked about, sorry, because I'm trying to read from two different parts of my screen here. Oh, I'm gonna go back to Detective Nuccio. What's the best way to carry your handbag so it won't be stolen? I know I read all the time, unfortunately, people come along on mopeds and they grab the strap right off your shoulder. I know I've often personally carry a bag across, my shoulder and across my head. So if they tried to grab it, that really wouldn't work, but I would go down. So what is it that you recommend?
Exactly. So we don't recommend cross shoulder, unless you're going to put a jacket on over top of it. And that's a good solution for wintertime. If you want to wear your purse cross shoulder, your bag cross shoulder, do that with the jacket on top. But just wearing it on one shoulder and holding it in front of you. This way, if someone does come along and try snatching it from you, you could just let it go and you're not going with it. Like I said earlier, whatever is in that bag or purse should be able to be replaced. You shouldn't be carrying anything with you that's irreplaceable. Backpacks, got a question about that a lot of times. Even with bags, you can just take, if you have bobby pins or paper clips or even a chain, stringing those between the two zippers, and that'll prevent it from being opened easily. So you take a bobby pin and you just stick that between the two zipper holes, and it'll prevent anyone from opening it. Especially if you're wearing a backpack, you can't really feel what's going on back there. So find a paper clip or a bobby pin and try that. Try attaching the two zippers together. So you can still get into it easily, but someone that's trying to do it while you're walking is going to have a little more difficult time undoing the bobby pin or paper clip.
So, Reverend, you were so exciting about the role of deacons. People are asking, do they have to study and get specific credentials to become a deacon and take on this kind of work?
No, it's an ordained office in the Presbyterian Church, but it is not something you go to special training for other than the training that we do ourselves. We have a training for new officers to talk about what the role is, what does a visit with someone look like, what are things to say, what are things to avoid saying. And then, we meet monthly, and part of those meetings is kind of ongoing training. Like we'll have someone to come in and talk with us about resources that are available, or, we'll talk with each other about difficult situations we might have encountered. And there's a whole lot of wisdom within the group that gets shared. We often, as part of the training, we just talk about kind of basic listening skills. So it's not something that there's formal training on. But we do talk a lot about what the office is within the church and just kind of general interpersonal skills, listening skills, kind of pastoral care 101.
And I guess follow up for you, Reverend, because I'm being asked also, are there any programs for atheists that offer the kind of services that you've been describing?
Well, I don't know what the Ethical Culture Society, I would imagine that is a place to find that kind of community. I know I haven't been in a long time, but there were a couple times that I went to a couple programs at the Ethical Cultural place on Central Park West. So that might be, that's kind of a more humanist organization where you might find that kind of community and support.
So I'll put in a pitch, because while I have a synagogue and I actually love going, I've always been more of an agnostic when it comes to the religion part of stuff. Saying that out loud, I love the music, and I love the clergy and the lessons that I learned there. But I also love to go to churches, and I'm not a Christian, but for the same reasons. There's nothing better than Christmas Eve music, fill in your blank church. I know some people line up at St. Patrick's for hours. Give me any church that has fun music on Christmas Eve, and I find it joyous and uplifting. And I don't know, but I don't think I've ever found anyone who told me, I went to fill in the blank program at fill in the blank church or synagogue or mosque, but I wasn't welcome because I said, but I'm not a Presbyterian, or I'm not Jewish, or I'm not Muslim. And the truth is, pretty much every single congregation is, well, come on in and participate. And a lot of them are offering some food programs certain days of the week or after services, which are designed for people to socialize and talk to each other. They offer programs again for seniors, for kids, for activities at holidays. So I personally believe that even if you don't identify yourself as religious or any specific religion, you might find a lot of things that are quite valuable and interesting for you going on in all of these congregations.
And if I can add one quick note, like we have volunteer opportunities where just people from the community volunteer, like our Thursday evening open table. We have some, it's organized by church members, but often the volunteers there are not church members. They're just community members who learned about it and want to come and volunteer. So there are also other opportunities like that at houses of worship or faith communities where, like you said, it's open for community involvement.
Another question for you, Detective Nuccio, now that we've gotten on to dating. Are there concerns about online dating for older people?
There are concerns about online dating for everybody. Scammers use these apps and hiding behind these apps as a means of scamming people. So you can't, if a deal seems too good to be true, it is. If a man or a woman or somebody you're on dating on a web profile, it seems too good to be true, it possibly could be as well. So be very careful. These scammers know that our older adults may be, like I mentioned earlier, a little lonely or looking for companionship, and they may feed on that and may start asking for money. Or I had an instance, this is very fresh, this happened recently, where someone was sending money for someone she believed that she was in love with and was actually engaged to online, never met him, and she was sending money for finances and for trips, and eventually he wanted to take a trip to meet her, and they wanted her to send money to do that, and all this money was exchanged, and all in the name of love. So it is a place that's fraught with also has a lot of scam possibilities. So I'd much rather see you go local. So go to your churches, go to your synagogues, go to your houses of worship, go to your libraries, go to your places locally to try to find a connection, whether it's friendship or for love. But yes, the scammers have found the love apps as well. So be very, very careful of them on those apps too. So that's a really, really good question.
I was waiting for someone to ask that because I also got, you want to be open to new opportunities and to never shut yourself off from new people. But
Sure.
Unfortunately, we also live in a world where you've got to be extra careful under certain circumstances.
Absolutely.
And certainly online situations have.
And that's every age group. I'm telling you,
Yes.
from whenever you start dating till however old you may become, everyone can fall victim to that. So it's horrible, but just be careful.
All right, so one more question quick, but I think somebody answered. I know Search and Care does this. If people are looking for medical or escorts to help them go to medical appointments, not just to help them physically, but I know even in my own family, the importance of, as we get older and we're worried about our health and maybe already suffering from decreased cognitive details, you want someone at the doctor's appointment who can take notes for you and ask questions for you and follow up. So that's what Search and Care does also, right, Robin?
Well, we provide escorts who will get you there and back, but because of HIPAA laws, our escorts do not sit in on the patient-doctor portion of the visit. Sometimes you can arrange for a family member to be called by the doctor as a follow-up after that appointment to share that information with another family member who may be involved, perhaps as a healthcare proxy. That would be a smart way to go about it.
Or use your phone to record the
Yes.
conversation.
Oh, they could use their phone to record the conversation. If you're unable, that's Rita. That's our medical escort suggesting that. But Liz, I wanted to go back to something you said about how the holidays are so special, especially when you're in our faith community. There's an event coming up this Saturday at 6:30 at the Brick Church at 92nd and Park. It's the annual lighting of the trees, and I don't care if you're single, you have a tribe, whatever. If you have a warm coat, hat, and gloves, don't miss it. It's spectacular. It can't help but make you feel great. What a great way to start the holiday season. There's the children's choir singing. Everybody knows the songs. You're going to sing along. And at the end, it's so magical. The minister throws a switch and all the lights on Park Avenue trees are lit up. I get little goosebumps telling you about it. Please don't miss it. Thank you.
So I can vouch for having exactly that experience multiple times going to the Brick Church tree lighting and caroling. It is so much fun. And no one cares whether you have a good or bad voice either. You just sing along. It's glorious. See, that's why I like to go to any religious institution. I love to sing. I'm not particularly good, but nobody ever throws you out, right? So there you go. All right, we've actually gotten to the point where I have to thank all of you so much for participating today and remind you that we have 2 more sessions of the resource fair. The session on Thursday, December 12th will focus on arts and culture. And our final session on December 13th will focus on legal resources. And again, if you want an online version to my older adult resource guide, because we've tried to put everything imaginable in this guide over the years, you can reach out either online or ask for a hard copy by emailing me at my office, lkrueger@nysenate.gov, or you can call my office 212-490-9535 to get a copy. Because while you can look at it online, it's pretty big. And it's probably easier for most people to just have the older resource guide in the paper version. And again, thank you all for participating. And thank you to my wonderful staff for putting this all together and finding you all. And I will see you all at the next event. Take care.